The last outpost. The Enterprise encounters the mysterious Ferengi for the first time.
The episode starts out with them encountering a Ferengi ship in space in an unexplored solar system.
And no one really knows anything about them. They haven't even seen one before.
The Enterprise is held in a force field, and for the first half of the episode, they and the audience assume that it's the Ferengi, but it turns out it's coming from down on the planet. They spend a lot of time building up the threat of the Ferengi before we actually see them.
And when they finally do show themselves, it's on a blinding white background, and the Ferengi's face is gigantic for some reason.
The Ferengi look like monsters with sharp teeth, and when you describe them just like that, it sounds fine, but their teeth are always crooked and sticking way out to the sides. How do you use teeth that are sticking out at right angles from your mouth? That kind of defeats the purpose of teeth. The rest of the visual design is distinct and slightly less human-looking than usual, which is good.
Do they have a problem with stuff flying into their ears? Like bugs and stuff? And they look pretty clean too, but I imagine that takes quite a bit of effort. And their ears are their erogenous zones.
Although we don't find that out until later. But how does sound play into that?
Are they constantly turned on just by listening to things?
The other thing to point out about the Ferengi is that their way of thinking is entirely based on trade.
Perhaps you would agree to a more productive relationship?
I prefer a more profitable one, human.
Again, it's really stupid how they handle the depiction of another culture, and it just undercuts any potential development or complexity and just makes them seem stupid and simplistic.
It does nothing but set them up as the comic relief for this series. And they have this reputation among the Federation of being a huge threat. I'm sure as soon as they ended the conversation, the Enterprise sent out a memo to the rest of Starfleet letting them know how stupid the Ferengi actually are. They could have tried to save face and said that one ship doesn't represent what the entire Ferengi race is like, but they don't.
When they're all on the bridge discussing the Ferengi, Picard says, let's go have a discussion about it. So they all leave the bridge and just continue the same discussion in a closed room off on the side, instead of staying where they are, where they can immediately act on whatever decisions they come to.
That's not entirely true. There's that one dude still on the bridge who they don't want to hear what they're talking about. And he's always convinced that every time they leave, it's always to talk about him behind his back. When they run into unknown stuff that shakes the ship and puts everyone in danger, what do they do about the other 900 people who are not on the bridge? Those people have no idea what's going on. What about the kids in school? Or the guy getting a haircut?
Or all the people in 10 Forward having their drinks?
People writing, or painting, or reading, or sleeping? Why do they even have inertial dampeners if they don't even work? The crew eventually figures out that the reason they're being held in place is not because of the Ferengi, but because of something on the planet down below. So an away team goes to check it out.
That twist, that it's not really the Ferengi, just takes the focus off of them, which doesn't help to make them feel like the threat that they should be.
And unfortunately, the real threat turns out to be from Power Rangers the movie from 1995. There's a mysterious figure in a hooded green cloak with the staff. But in that movie, it was a scantily clad woman. And in this episode, it's a thankfully fully garbed old man.
They don't even explain anything about him. He befriends Riker for no reason. He just says his ideas about tactics intrigue him.
And then at the end when they leave, they ask him what he's going to do, and he just says, I'll just stay here and be this omnipotent dude.
He says, I'm used to blowing up every ship that goes by. They don't tell him, maybe you should stop doing that, or ask him if he's going to keep doing that. They just say, okay, and then they just leave. It's like if someone went to North Korea and was like, hey, I became friends with their leader, and he agreed not to kill me or anyone I tell him not to kill, but I didn't tell him not to kill anyone, I just came back home.
That sounds a lot like Dennis Rodman.
The old guy's makeup makes him look like he's from a 70s Doctor Who episode. You wouldn't have been seeing it in high quality back then, and it might have been passable, but looking at it now, it does not look good.
We're very spoiled now. And throughout this whole thing, the Ferengi are still there jumping around like idiots. Not only are we as viewers ignoring them, the characters themselves are completely ignoring them too.
Way to undercut your new villains as soon as they show up. Even for the original series, the way they're acting would have stuck out as being stupid. The threatening aliens in the original series were way more effective than that. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was the Chinese finger trap. A super intelligent android can't figure out how it works.
Just a very early, clumsy attempt to show Data trying to be more human, but it's not done well.
And it comes up like 3 times over the course of the episode.
Not to mention as the closing joke of the entire episode.
I seem to have reached an odd functional impasse.
Permission to beam a box of Data's Chinese finger puzzles over to the Ferengi.
Yeah, let's mess with them by sending these things over that they could easily interpret as some kind of insult. That's assuming they would even get their fingers stuck in them. They don't know what they're for, there's no reason to assume that that's what they're going to use them for.
This is the flagship of Earth, and the people unknown cultures will encounter first. Great example. The Last Outpost. Overall?
The first half is not bad. There's some good building of tension, good mystery, but the second half ruins everything. It's so dumb. I would give it a C-.
I would also say C-. They spend most of the episode building up the Ferengi, only to completely fail in attempting to establish them as a credible threat. And then they just walk away from the only potentially interesting part of this episode, which is the old guy's history and culture. A very choppy, uneven, awkward episode.